All right, it's 5 o'clock. We call are you ready, Savannah?
We're ready.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. Call the agenda meeting to order, and Josh, take us through the agenda.
All right, we'll start off with our customary call to order with our welcome, our Pledge of Allegiance, invocation by Mr. Anthony Rodriguez from Valley Hope Church, and then we'll have any announcements that may need to be made. Item 2 is our proclamations, awards, and recognition. We'll do a Martin Luther King Jr. proclamation. We want to do a proclamation to recognize Deputy Chief John Wilson, who has retired from the Black Mountain Fire Department, who, I may get this number wrong, I have to look back at the proclamation, but I know he started with Black Mountain a long time, about 35 years ago as a volunteer. And then he became full-time, and I'm thinking he was full-time for around 26 years.
Yeah, that's what the proclamation says.
So we want to recognize him for that. That's a pretty significant achievement. And we want to do a proclamation, the 2C, for honoring the Eagle Scout Noah Lukowitz, if I didn't butcher that too bad, for the project he did at Lake Tomahawk for the handicap accessible playground. Item 3, we'll have citizen comments. Item 4, this, and I don't know, are they going to be here to do that via Zoom, the rail folks?
They are going to be present.
They're going to be present,
Yes.
Okay. So you have a presentation from, if you recall, Alderman, or Vice Mayor Stone did talk to the board about the railroad as it comes up, and the folks that had spent lots of time and energy constructing the railroad, and folks that had passed away. We want those folks to give us a presentation on that item. 5A, your consent agenda will be adoption of minutes. That'll be December 14th, regular session, and then December 29th, special called meeting. Item B will be a budget amendment. This is for, in the amount of $15,000. This is to replace an extremely old generator that is at our substation over close to the community garden. We lost some power over there. I guess it was probably a couple months ago. We had some ice, and we were out of power for a few days. And the generator that's there now is just so dated that it really won't run anything. So we want to get a new generator in there and get them updated. So if they do lose power, they've got all the things they need over there to perform their work. And then I need, if the board's okay, the mayor's okay, and I hate that this happens, but sometimes it just goes this way. I would like to add a resolution for Deputy Chief Wilson to keep his fireman's helmet, kind of like what we do for police when we give them their gun and badge. He has requested that he be able to keep his fireman's helmet. So
Sure, so you need to add that?
I'm going to add that to the agenda. Yes, sir.
So I'd entertain a motion to make that addition to the,
So moved.
okay, that's great. And do we need to do the roll call vote? I guess we have to, don't we?
Yeah, because we
You
didn't know who's.
All right, so
Archie Patillo, aye.
Okay, aye.
Pam King, aye.
thank you. It's added.
All righty. Item 6 will be our second round of citizen comments. 7, unfinished business. This will be, we have 2 boards that we still need to, on item A, which is the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium, I think there was some discussion of potentially swapping Archie and Jessica on those, making Archie the member and making Jessica, the alternate member for the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. Item B is the MSD board, or Metropolitan Sewer District Board of Directors, and we'll just need to appoint a member for that board.
Do you want to fill them in on Bob
And I would
Watts?
say,
Because our question, if you recall, was whether Bob had served, we try to keep it to, and whether he had or not.
So Bob, in fact, has served a number of terms, but the most recent term, he's only been serving in this capacity for 1 term now. So I think typically we like to do 2 terms and then try to switch it up. But he would be this, if he does get appointed, it would be his 2nd term this time.
And he was interested,
He is very much interested, and I'll say MSD would be delighted to have him back.
Great.
New business. So the first item, 8A, would be a cost of living increase for actually all town employees. This would include part-time as well. Back when we were doing the budget last year, we were all very concerned about what our revenues were going to be. So we did budget accordingly. I think we did a 15% decrease on sales tax, a little bit of decrease on ad valorem tax, And those numbers have been coming in considerably better than what we budgeted. The cost of this increase would be around $55,000. We originally budgeted in this year's budget for a 1% cost of living increase to begin in January right now. And I'm asking the board to approve a 3% instead of a 1%. So that difference is around $55,000. I do have some figures from, and I can go over these Monday, some figures from some other municipalities in the county and what they've done this year too. So I'll
Great.
provide that to you. Item B, of course, would go along with item A. We'll need to do a budget amendment for that cost of living increase because that's going to, of course, hit our general fund. Item 8C, Buncombe County dispatch consolidation. So this is something that the chief and I have talked about for over a year. We've had discussions with the county about this. Probably started back before COVID started, probably around the end of 2019, and we made some pretty good headway. Unfortunately, the pandemic came in and we just kind of ceased those conversations. But those have picked back up now, and we want to get this in front of the board here. What we want to do, we've got 4 positions over there now that run our dispatch. That costs us about $240,000 a year in salaries. The county, and I think you've got the draft intergovernmental agreement in your packet. But what I gave you just now is kind of a breakdown of the model they have used to run these figures for us. Our original plan was we hoped we could get it at an amount cheap enough where we could replace those employees with patrol officers, more boots on the ground, which would be, I think, more in the line of what the police department needs, whereas I think the boots on the ground would make more sense versus the dispatch positions. So like I said, we've had those conversations with Buncombe. They are also in conversations with other municipalities in the county to try and do more of a consolidated dispatch countywide. Right now, Black Mountain has their own dispatch. We also dispatch for Montreat. They do give us an amount of money every year to do that. Biltmore Forest does their own dispatch. Asheville, of course, does their own dispatch. Weaverville and Woodfin do not do their own dispatch now. The county does handle that for them. Not sure how long that's been going on with the county, but they have not been charged in the past for their dispatch. The county has provided that service for them for nothing. So when we went into this conversation with the county, I just asked the county that we would, the town of Black Mountain would like to have a conversation about coming in and getting the same, kind of the same deal that the other places were. So I think that kind of started where we are, started what we had and where we are now with the
which was free.
Yes. Yes. So, those 2 municipalities.
That's what we were looking for.
Yeah, I was hoping we would get it relatively cheap. But if you look at the numbers, we are getting it done cheaper than what we can do it for by about $80,000. Now, I did send this intergovernmental agreement to Attorney Sneed. He did look at it. I think he's got a little bit of concern with some of the language about CPI indexes and how they figure those raises.
The only thing is I've drafted a lot of documents where you have an increase based on cost of living. There's 2 ways of going about it. One is cost of living increase based on your base year, and the other one is what I call compounding, where we get an increase based on cost of living, creates a new number, and the next year you get an increase based on cost of living based on that new number. Obviously, your price is going up faster.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, and we haven't had inflation in so long, that's probably not going to be a noticeable difference. But if we had inflation, then you could see that cost jumping far faster than you anticipated. I don't know that that's a big worry. I think we're going to be a ways from worrying about inflation. But the counter to that is the contract does provide that we can terminate with 6 months' notice. We can always give notice, we can terminate and renegotiate if it looks like that's going to happen. So I don't think that's a big worry, just something to be aware of.
Right.
So,
And also, it seems to me that, and I think that's still a good point, but, we're working with presumably parties that we all want to row in the same direction. And so if that's a concern and a problem for us, I think it would likely be for everybody, including including the county, if that price is, it's going up that much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it still doesn't keep you from wanting the agreement that is best interest of the town. I get that, but
And then the choices are renegotiate that term or just be aware of it. We start seeing inflation, then to bring
Right.
back to the table at that time.
Right.
So you have to factor in the lost revenue from Montreat. Did you make a move like that?
Well, Montreat, that is a good point, Alderman King, and yes, we will need to factor that in. Right now, they're paying us around, I think it's between $15,000 and $20,000 a year that they pay us right now for their dispatch. So yes, that's a good point.
well, the way you'd look at it is to say, instead of saving something like 90,000, is that what we're saving? We're really saving 75.
Right.
Is that right?
Gotcha.
And then do you have an estimate or a ballpark of, the cost of having a new officer, having more boots on the ground?
Well, what's going to happen with this, Alderman Hay, is, I think going into that a year ago, we were hoping we would get it for pretty much, an amount that would be easy for us to absorb and still have those officers. With the way that this has turned out, I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I think you're going to look, what we're going to end up doing is we've been short an employee over there now for quite a few months for dispatch because we've been waiting on this agreement to come out. We didn't want to hire someone and then have to let them go because the county is going to end up absorbing these positions that we don't have. So the existing people we have working, the county is going to absorb those people.
Okay.
But if you look at the numbers, if we're paying $240 now and we end up letting that go for $160, you have to factor in the Montreat money, and we also want to keep one person up front at the PD to be, someone needs to be up front.
Mhm.
So out of that 240, one of those positions is going to stay as more of an admin position.
Mm.
So it's really going to be kind of a wash, really in the end.
Sounds like a small savings, though.
It's probably a small savings, but there's not enough savings to offset the cost of new employees.
Okay.
Put it that way.
I watched the county commission report about this last week, and they flat out said that they thought it would be the quality of service to Black Mountain would be improved.
Right.
As opposed to a two-step process to call into the police, so
Mm-hmm.
another factor to consider besides the money.
Yeah, it's not costing us, let's just say it's not costing us any more. And that was my thought too, when I was chatting with Josh about it. You'd have to think that the service it would just be better than we could afford, frankly.
Mhm.
And you said, like you said, the two-step process is a little problematic. So that's just better in itself.
All right, and then D, of course, this is our emergency order we did. I guess it was last week now? No, it was this week, wasn't it?
No, it was last week.
Last week, sorry.
It's hard to tell.
So, and I apologize for the confusion of that order. I think the email I'd originally gotten that I'd given out to you was the 8th. And then,
I'll take some of the
That's
blame
okay.
on that.
and then, they did make some changes where they left it more open-ended. And if you know, the governor came out yesterday, gave his speech and didn't put anything new in, and just extended it for 3 weeks. So the way ours is written, it is supposed to end tomorrow. So, we will need to figure that out. I'm guessing, is it okay to wait till Monday to do that, Ron?
Were we gonna look at that today? I thought that's what we said.
I thought we should not take actions in an agenda
The
meeting.
problem is in the agenda meeting, nobody's expecting action to be taken. It wasn't noticed as a special call meeting. It wouldn't hurt if this board, if the consensus is that you anticipate that Monday you will extend that order, that at least the public knows that's where the direction you're taking. It won't be an order in effect for 3 days, but you won't have restaurants ramping up, shut back down kind of thing. I think it's,
I'd be reluctant to make that decision tonight with missing 2 aldermen. I mean, it feels like that's a conversation we should have before we decide.
well, I agree.
That's
You should make that
that's good,
decision. I
reasonable
just
thought.
want- I was just wondering if this board would want, if the three are here, say, it's gonna be our inclination, at least the public knows where this might go. They won't be subject to the order for 3 days, but knowing if I'm running a business, I'm not gonna go out and buy stock for my kitchen on the thought that I get to open up now, and I'm really not.
Well, the good
That's
news
why I
is
think
about a
no.
foot of snow would stop a lot of
It's just-
everything going
It might
on.
slow down a little.
How about if we put it this way, that we would, if anyone is attentive to the agenda meeting and this discussion, that we would encourage our restaurateurs to wait until after Monday's meeting, when this item is on the agenda, to make any decisions. As it stands, we would advise them, I would advise them to not make any decisions, to not assume that it's going to go back up to 50% capacity until we meet on Monday, when we will decide, board will decide.
I'd be
How does that
comfortable
sound?
with that.
I would
Was
think.
that clear, Savannah? Did that make sense? And so if anyone calls and it's not clear based on their listening to this meeting, you can, that hopefully will give them some direction.
I just know if I were a business person, community depended on that, I would like to have some sense of what might be going on. And at least if they're watching this and knowing that decision will be rendered Monday, if I'm running a restaurant, it tells me what to order and not to order
That's a good
in
point.
the next 3 days.
All right, and then we're gonna roll into our public hearings. We've got, looks like 4 of them. The first one being an annexation petition from William C. Honeycutt Jr. and et al., which is, he's got two other folks that own that property that are on that petition, listed on the petition that have signed. But that will be for annexation for a piece of property located off of McCoy Cove Road. I think it's off Brooks Cove,
Bricks Cove.
which is about 16 and a half acres roughly.
So, and I have a quick question, and I think it'd be better to discuss all this on Monday, just at the public meeting, Ron. But just for the board to consider in the meantime, and reach out to Josh, but the cost of annexation to the town. Because obviously we have tax dollars, but what are our obligations? And we can go through that, but specifically, I am wondering about the road and our obligations for that infrastructure. That road is fairly inadequate.
It's fairly narrow road.
And so would that be a matter of negotiation with the developer?
It's a two-prong, that's just gonna be an odd hearing altogether. And I plan on telling the board that anyway tonight. That I think we've had this discussion to some degree earlier, is a lot of developers want to know that once they annex, they can do what they want to do. But the town can't rule on a site plan or the particular zoning until you have jurisdiction by annexation. And which makes it a little strange that Monday night, you'll be making that decision. Your first decision is whether or not to annex, almost without consideration for what they want to do. And so it's hard to tie annexation to what you'll make them do, as opposed to when they come in with a site plan. The downside there, of course, is they have, if it's whatever fits zoning, fits. And we're not in a very good position to say, you guys are going to have to build the road out for us. And so that's an awkward one. However, it is a term that you might get a developer to commit to some degree, but I don't know unless he comes to you what's called a development agreement proposal or traditional neighborhood development proposal, that the board has the ability to put that burden on them. So it's something for the town to think about. You're right, something for the town to consider, because I don't think that's not a buck you can pass with their zoning regulations. It sounds like, now, there's an exception to that, and that's when the development is of such a size that you're going to require a traffic study, and the traffic study comes back and says, this has to happen. then you can impose some of that cost or that activity on the developer. I don't think even on 16 acres, you're gonna have a developer big enough that triggers our traffic study requirements.
75 houses, isn't it? Or no, yeah, 75 houses triggers the traffic study,
I think that's correct. So,
and this is 40 some, I think.
I think we're ish.
well, again, when you're talking about, remember, when you're sitting there Monday night, you're gonna be talking about annexation in the absence of
That's
what the
right.
development on it might be.
Right.
And of course, the developer sort of wants to know that when he gets annexed, that he's likely to get the zoning he wants. Otherwise, he shot himself in the foot.
Right.
But that said, you will be looking at this as a package.
Right.
Because you know what is behind the annexation. Nobody wants to be annexed to their 16 acres just so they can get city water to water their corn.
I would, Josh, I would like it if you're able to, and if not, I would like to encourage us to, to table, or to continue would be better since it's a public hearing, I suppose. But I'd like for the board to be aware of some of the potential cost. And I know it's going to be an estimate, but if we needed to, and you might need to get with Jess because the developer is going to have to do some road work associated with the development because it wouldn't be us. He mentioned, I chatted with him on the phone, but there's some, that would potentially fall to the town. And I think that would be wise for the board and the public to have some estimate of that. And if we can't have it by Monday, I think it's still good that we enter into the public hearing, but I might suggest to the board that we might want to continue that hearing until the board can be fully informed of the potential cost. Would that work, Ron?
I think so. While you're considering annexation and without considering a site plan, when you do annex property and you're anticipating rezoning, you probably have to think, what can happen, and that would have to be the most intense use, and you make your decision based on that, even though you don't have that site plan in front of you. And looking at the potential cost to the town of the most intense use is a proper thing to look at.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do what we can to get some estimates on that. Really, I think it's just the pattern, widening the road, I think is really what you're referring to, right?
I think so, but if I'm missing anything else that could occur, the water and sewer and so forth, but the developer does do, if anybody building a house they're gonna do that part of it. And am I missing anything?
I think the road is.
The road would be
is
the most
big-
significant matter
Right.
for us.
How about drainage issues down the road? Does the town end up paying to take care of problems down the road that are caused by this development?
Well, I don't want,
Jessica has a comment.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to send the whole meeting, if that's all right. The drainage one I wanted to speak to just specifically because we have our stormwater ordinance is stronger than the counties. Our post-construction ordinance is significantly stronger than the counties. So in whatever capacity this is developed, the water's going to run where it's going to run, whether it's our jurisdiction or not. And the county's stormwater ordinances are not as strong as ours. So in whatever capacity it's developed, if it is developed within the town, the post-construction conditions have to meet our ordinance, which is they can't be worse than when they started. More in short.
'Cause I know there's a stream right in the middle of it, right?
Yes, and we and the county both have a 30-foot stream buffer ordinance.
Uh-huh. So they can't build on top of the stream with a culvert and then dump the water.
The only way that something like that can happen is if it's approved by the Army Corps of Engineers and meets their standards.
they would be able to access, they would be able to put in a culvert and put in a bridge
Yes.
to access, the other side of the stream if that ended up being what they needed to do. But
Yeah.
as far as building on top of those streams, that's
That's not
probably not
typical.
very likely.
It's
Just
also
the-
good for the board to know, and maybe you already know this, but that the current county zoning would allow 10 units on an acre. The
Yes.
current county zoning. I think that's what Jess
Yes.
told me.
It would allow for 10 units an acre and larger lot sizes. So not only does it increase the number of houses, it also pushes the development that occurs further out and prevents the ability to conserve wooded areas, as opposed to our UR8 zoning district, which allows for the 5,000 square feet, which allows the smaller footprint to be clustered together and prevent additional unnecessary cutting.
And everything, and I think Josh shared this with me, but maybe Jesse also, and you already may know this, but the zoning around the 16 acres is all
It
UR8.
is UR8.
And so this isn't spot zoning. It's doesn't fall into that. So that aspect of it's a little more straightforward, it would seem to me. And the planning board, what would
Yes, they supported the UR8.
unanimously?
I recall, so yes.
Yeah.
They were supportive, in it being, in abutting the town, having, it actually is, we have more restrictive ordinances, so
Right.
they like that idea.
Right. So, and again, I think we can cover some of these topics again on Monday, but I think the most significant thing for us is just to be aware of the town's responsibilities upon annexation.
All right.
So, excuse me, along those same lines, I'd be curious to know what the value is for us too, if that added tax value, if we can estimate that.
That's, I mean, we could give you a value right now. It's going to be tough to give you one once it's completely built out. It's going to be more, of course, when you get houses on it.
The systems
But-
development fees would be, potentially, I think they were thinking about 3 units acres or closer to 50 units. So that would be what,
$200,000.
yeah, close to it. Just on that one alone.
Yeah.
I can look it up right now and get you a tax value.
Oh, I mean, I'm just curious, if we're talking about the expenses, I'd like to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the thing is, and I've thought about that too, Doug, and there is, and I mentioned it to Jesse, that it would be helpful in discussions with the developer to understand what our payback is for anything, even just the stuff we do. But then at the same time, as soon as folks are living in those homes, we're providing services for them.
Sure,
And so
Yeah.
that payback is not exactly an easy
right.
No,
calculation.
it's not. And Ron can tell me if I'm being overly concerned, but we can get into some dicey territory when we start considering rezoning based on the type of household. This is a fair housing.
Yeah.
We can't make zoning decisions based on that.
Right.
So we want to be cognizant of some of those questions.
All right. So 9B will be the rezoning, which I think we've probably talked about enough already, unless anyone's got some more questions. Happy to answer them. Item 9C will be the public hearing to close the portion of the platted right-of-way parallel in between West College Street and Goldmont Street. And then 9D is a public hearing for text amendments to the Village of Cheshire Master Plan. So this will be some changing of some language in their master plan.
Is there anything of note in that you would like to mention to the board to be considering?
And it was supported by planning board. It does allow for some smaller lots, but these were in some shape or fashion ferried through the process before. It looks like we missed some technicalities on some paperwork. But it applies to a small area and it supports what they were doing overall.
Right.
So I don't have any real concerns.
And then we'll have communication from town attorney and myself. And that'll be it.
Very good.
If I could just speak for a moment. I had a phone call today from the attorney for the town of Wingate, and Josh sent her to me and gave me credit for drafting our system development fee ordinance that Jessica did, and I proudly took credit for her work.
Well, I think, but that was
But the reason I bring it up is the town of Wingate said they've looked at a number of ordinances and they liked ours as the best one to steal.
All right,
that's always nice.
there you go. It's a compliment to our town attorney. For sure.
You take all you can get.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Right.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there any other questions or comments?
No.
Everybody good to go? All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
I'll stay warm.
Thank you, you too. Be careful. Good to see you, Archie. Take care. See you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
I don't know about the rest of the world, but I step out in the cold, I'm enjoying my mask.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it does have-
That's a bit of